At the turn of the 19th century, Vienna's streets were always filled with music. Carriages rattled over cobblestones, and from open windows floated melodies of pianos and violins, the echoes of a city that breathed art. Among the names most often heard in the concert halls and aristocratic salons was Ludwig van Beethoven, the temperamental, visionary genius who, despite his increasing deafness, continued to compose with almost superhuman intensity. But behind the imposing figure of the composer was a profoundly human man, sensitive, vulnerable, and at times, deeply lonely. It was in this context that a young woman named Therese Malfatti entered his life, a piano student from one of Vienna's most respected families. Beethoven, known as a demanding and passionate teacher, accepted the challenge of instructing her. Therese was charming, her presence graceful and her smile capable of softening even the stern countenance of her teacher. Yet, despite her natural poise, her piano skills left much to be desired. She played with effort, hesitating in fast passages, and her sight reading was only average. Even so, Beethoven saw in her something beyond a mere pupil. He saw a sensitive spirit, a soul that understood the beauty of music even when her fingers stumbled over the keys. As weeks passed, their lessons became more than mere instruction. The composer, usually engulfed in silence and inner tempests, found in Therese a gentle refuge. He liked to watch her concentrating on the sheet music, her brow furrowed. Sometimes, when she struck a wrong note and let out a timid laugh, Beethoven's heart would soften. Gradually, what had begun as admiration grew into affection, and affection into something deeper. He began to write little pieces dedicated to her, musical fragments that reflected both tenderness and the melancholy of a love that perhaps could never be fully returned. One afternoon, while walking on the outskirts of Vienna, Beethoven had an idea. He decided to compose something special for Therese, simple enough for her to play, but beautiful enough to charm anyone who heard it. He wanted to give her something that would make her shine, a piece that would reveal both her delicacy and the depth of his own feelings. Back at the piano, he began to work. The first notes emerged soft and innocent, a touch of melancholy mingled with sweetness, a melody that seemed to hover between dream and memory. The main theme, played with the right hand, was tender and repetitive, like an intimate conversation between two kindred souls. At first, he called it a bagatelle in a minor, but in his heart, he knew it was his gift for Elise, the name by which it would be known forever. For days, Beethoven devoted himself to perfecting the piece. He imagined Therese seated at the piano, her fingers hesitant but determined. So he kept the opening simple, almost like an invitation. The notes floated like petals in the wind, easy enough for her to master, yet so pure in beauty that they would enchant any listener. However, as so often happens, fate was unmoved by romantic intentions. One morning, Beethoven received an unexpected visit from a mutual friend. During their conversation, the friend casually mentioned that Therese was engaged, promised to a young aristocrat of good standing, someone suitable to her social class. Beethoven, startled, tried to conceal his reaction, but the blow struck deep. The news echoed in his mind. The sweet notes he had written suddenly sounded ironic. The tenderness of the melody turned bitter. That night, alone, he sat again at the piano. Candlelight flickered, casting shadows on the walls of his small apartment. He began to play the melody of Für Elise once more, but now the sound was different. There was pain between the notes, a subtle lament. Then, driven by a mix of sadness and wounded pride, Beethoven decided to change the course of the composition. From that moment on, the passages became more complex. What had once been simple and accessible turned into a sequence of intricate variations filled with leaps, arpeggios, and sudden shifts in rhythm. He wrote with fury and passion, making the piece increasingly difficult, so difficult that Therese would never be able to play it. It was as if, by complicating the music, he was transforming disappointment into art. The sweetness of the opening still remained, but it was now wrapped in a storm of emotion. The contrast between the innocent main theme and the turbulent variations perfectly reflected the conflict within him, love and resentment, tenderness and disillusionment. When he finished, Beethoven looked at the manuscript and, for a moment, smiled bitterly. He knew he had created something beautiful, perhaps one of the most memorable melodies of his life, but he also knew it carried the weight of an unreturned love. He never actually gave the piece to Therese. The manuscript stayed hidden among his papers, forgotten for decades. Only many years after his death was it found by a musicologist, and the work finally received the name by which the world knows it today, Für Elise. Curiously, no one knows for certain who the Elise in the title truly was. Some believe the name resulted from a simple misreading, that the original manuscript said Für Therese, but the copyist mistook the handwriting. Others suggest that Elise might have been a nickname or even another woman who briefly crossed the composer's path. Whatever the truth, the mystery only deepens the fascination surrounding the piece. What is certain is that Für Elise became one of the most famous compositions in all of classical music. Children and adults around the world learn its first notes at the piano, perhaps without ever imagining the story of love, loss, and pride behind it. Within its structure lies an almost poetic symbolism. The opening theme, repeated again and again, is like a memory that refuses to fade, an echo of the past that lingers. The middle variations, full of passion and turbulence, represent life moving on the whirlwind of emotions that replaces innocence. And, at the end, the gentle melody returns, as if Beethoven, now resigned, accepted the inevitable and allowed love to exist only as music. Perhaps that was the greatest irony of all. The piece born from a frustrated love became immortal. What was meant to be a personal gift, an intimate gesture, transcended centuries and touched the hearts of millions. And, in a way, Therese or Elise, as she became immortalized, never stopped playing that music. Every time someone, anywhere in the world, rests their fingers on a piano and lets the opening notes of Für Elise ring out, it is as if Beethoven's spirit relives that ancient feeling, the love, the pain, and the beauty that only music can express. In the end, perhaps he achieved exactly what he had intended, to transform the fragility of a broken heart into an eternal melody.